The gunshot cracked through the morning air like thunder, scattering dust from the weathered sign that read, "Welcome to Silver Creek, Colorado, 1876. Lillian Allen flinched, her fingers tightening around the worn leather reins as her horse sidestepped nervously. The second shot sent her heart racing, but she steered her mount forward, knowing there was no turning back now. She had traveled too far, risked too much. Silver Creek emerged from the golden haze of dawn, a collection of wooden buildings strung along a single dirt road, unremarkable except for what it represented: sanctuary. Lillian adjusted the wide-brimmed hat that shadowed her face and straightened her spine, ignoring the ache of 3 days' hard riding. The dress she wore belonged to someone else, just like the name she'd give when asked. The town was already stirring despite the early hour. A pair of miners stumbled from the saloon, a shopkeeper swept his boardwalk, and several women carried baskets toward what appeared to be a small market at the far end of the street. No one paid her much mind as she guided her horse toward the livery stable, just another traveler passing through. "Morning, miss." The stable hand couldn't have been more than 16, all elbows and freckles. "Need your horse looked after?" "Yes, please." Lillian's voice came out hoarse from trail dust. "I'd be grateful, passing through or staying a spell." "Staying," she answered, handing over a few coins. "For now," the boy nodded, accepting both her money and her vagueness without question. That was the way of frontier townspeople came from somewhere else, often with pasts they preferred not to discuss. "Name's Billy," he offered, taking the reins. "If you need work, they're hiring at the Silverthorne Hotel. Cook just quit." Lillian gave him a grateful nod. "Thank you, Billy." She retrieved her small carpet bag from the saddle and turned toward town, careful not to give her name in return. She made her way down the main street, aware of curious glances, but determined not to meet anyone's eyes directly. The Silverthorne Hotel stood 3 stories tall, practically a palace in this modest settlement. Its weathered sign promised clean rooms and hot meals, which sounded like heaven after nights spent beneath the stars. The hotel lobby smelled of pine soap and bacon. A portly man with mutton chop whiskers looked up from behind the front desk, his eyebrows rising at the sight of a woman traveling alone. "Good morning," Lillian said, approaching with what she hoped was a confident stride. "I understand you might be hiring." The man's expression shifted from curiosity to relief. "Indeed we are. Cook left without notice 3 days past. You have experience?" "I do." It wasn't a lie. She'd managed the kitchen of her father's house for years, feeding not only family but ranch hands as well. "Name?" The man asked, reaching for a ledger. Lillian hesitated just long enough for the man to notice. "Sarah," she finally said. "Sarah Wilson." The man's eyes narrowed slightly, but he wrote the name down. "I'm Harold Pemberton, proprietor. Kitchen work starts at 4 in the morning, ends after supper service. Room and board included along with $5 weekly." "That suit you?" "Perfectly," Lillian replied, relief washing through her. "A job, a roof, and anonymity, exactly what she needed. You can start tomorrow. Martha will show you to a room in the back. It's small, but it's yours as long as the work suits us both." He rang a small bell, summoning a gray-haired woman who emerged from a back hallway. Martha led Lillian through the hotel to a narrow room with a single window overlooking an alley. The furnishings were sparse: an iron bed, a washstand, a small chest of drawers, but to Lillian it looked like paradise. "Bathrooms down the hall," Martha explained. "Shared with the other staff. Breakfast at 5, lunch at noon, dinner at 6. Mr. Pemberton runs a respectable establishment. No gentlemen callers, no drinking, no trouble." "I won't be any trouble," Lillian promised. After Martha left, Lillian sat on the edge of the bed, allowing herself a moment of stillness. Her fingers moved to the chain around her neck, pulling out the locket hidden beneath her high-collared dress. The small gold oval held 2 miniature portraits, her mother and father, both gone now. She snapped it shut quickly, unwilling to indulge in memories. With mechanical efficiency, she unpacked her meager belongings: 2 dresses, a nightgown, undergarments, a hairbrush, and a small Derringer pistol that she tucked beneath her mattress. The weight of what she'd left behind pressed on her chest, but she pushed it away. There was only forward now. After washing the trail dust from her face, Lillian ventured out to familiarize herself with the town. Silver Creek proved to be larger than it had first appeared, with side streets branching off the main thoroughfare. She found the general store, a doctor's office, a small church, and two competing saloons, the Silver Dollar and the Lucky Strike. As she passed the Lucky Strike, the batwing doors swung open and a man stepped out, adjusting his hat against the bright afternoon sun. He was tall, with broad shoulders that tapered to a lean waist, and he moved with the easy confidence of someone comfortable in his own skin. The star pinned to his vest caught the sunlight, identifying him as the local law. The sheriff paused on the boardwalk, his eyes meeting hers for a brief moment. Lillian quickly looked away, her heart suddenly pounding. It was foolish to fear every lawman she encountered, but old habits died hard. "Madam," he said, tipping his hat as she passed. "Sheriff," she replied, keeping her eyes down and her pace steady. She continued her exploration, noting potential escape routes and hiding places a habit formed over the past month of running. By the time she returned to the hotel, the sun was setting, painting the western sky in brilliant orange and purple. The dining room was busy with hotel guests and a few townspeople who apparently took their evening meals there. Martha intercepted her in the lobby. "Mr. Pemberton asked if you might help serve tonight, seeing as we're short-handed. Kitchen's through there." She pointed toward a swinging door. Lillian nodded. "Of course." The kitchen was hot and chaotic, with a harried-looking young woman attempting to manage both cooking and serving. She looked up when Lillian entered, relief evident on her flushed face. "Oh, thank goodness, I'm Betsy. You must be the new cook, starting tomorrow," Lillian confirmed. "I'm Sarah. How can I help tonight?" For the next 2 hours, Lillian carried plates of beef stew and fresh bread to the dining room patrons, refilled coffee cups, and cleared tables. The work was familiar and oddly comforting in its simplicity. No one asked questions beyond what was for dessert, and the physical labor left little room for dwelling on the past. As the dining room emptied, Lillian was wiping down the last table when the front door opened. The sheriff stepped inside, removing his hat as he spoke with Mr. Pemberton at the front desk. Lillian kept her head down, focusing intently on invisible spots on the tablecloth. "Just arrived today, you say?" The sheriff's voice carried across the quiet room. "That's right, Sheriff." "Hired her as our new cook. Seems respectable enough." Lillian could feel eyes on her back but didn't turn around. "Evening, miss," the sheriff called. "Welcome to Silver Creek." There was no avoiding a response without appearing suspicious. Lillian turned, offering a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Thank you, Sheriff. It seems like a lovely town." He studied her for a moment longer than was comfortable. "Where are you coming from, if you don't mind my asking?" "Denver," she lied smoothly. "I was working for a family there, but they relocated east." He nodded, seemingly satisfied. "Well, I'm Sheriff Austin Jameson. If you need anything or have any trouble, my office is just down the street." "Thank you." Lillian turned back to her task, hoping he would leave. Instead, he approached, stopping a respectful distance away. "Didn't catch your name, miss." The moment stretched between them. "Sarah Wilson," she finally said, the false name feeling awkward on her tongue. Something flickered in his eyes, not suspicion exactly, but awareness. "Well, Miss Wilson, enjoy your stay in Silver Creek." He touched the brim of his hat and turned to leave. Lillian released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Sheriff Jameson was observant, dangerous for someone with secrets. She would need to be more careful around him. That night, in her small room, Lillian sat by the window watching moonlight spill over the quiet town. She'd run for weeks, changing her name in each new place, always looking over her shoulder. She was tired, not just physically, but soul-deep exhausted from the weight of fear. Silver Creek could be different, she told herself. A place to rest, to to gather strength and resources before deciding what came next. As long as she kept to herself and aroused no suspicion, she might find temporary peace here. But as she finally lay down to sleep, Lillian couldn't shake the memory of the sheriff's penetrating gaze, as if he'd seen past her careful facade to the frightened woman beneath. It was just her imagination, she reasoned. Austin Jameson was simply doing his job, keeping track of newcomers to his town. Still, she checked that the Derringer was within easy reach before closing her eyes, surrendering to the first real bed she'd slept in for weeks. Dawn arrived with a gentle knock at her door. 4 o'clock, Miss Wilson, Martha called. Kitchen's waiting. Lillian was already awake, having slept fitfully. She dressed quickly in her plainest dress, pinned her dark blonde hair into a sensible bun, and made her way to the kitchen. The large cast-iron stove was already radiating heat, and a young boy was bringing in armloads of firewood. "Morning, madam," he said cheerfully. "I'm Toby. I help with the wood and such." "Good morning, Toby. I'm Sarah." The kitchen was well equipped, with ample pots and pans hanging from a ceiling rack, a large work table in the center, and shelves stocked with basic supplies. Lillian rolled up her sleeves and got to work, falling into the familiar rhythm of breakfast preparation: biscuits mixed and rolled, bacon sliced, coffee grounds measured. By the time Betsy arrived to help serve, the dining room tables were set, and the smell of fresh biscuits filled the air. The hotel guests began trickling in at 6, most of them traveling salesmen and a few families passing through. Mr. Pemberton appeared briefly, nodding with approval at the efficiency of service. "Good work, Miss Wilson," he said. "Seems you know your way around a kitchen." "Thank you, sir." The morning passed quickly, and after the breakfast rush, Lillian had time to plan the midday and evening meals. She took inventory of the pantry, making a list of supplies needed from the general store. Martha provided her with a small allowance for fresh vegetables from the market. The market was a collection of wagons and tables set up near the church, where local farmers and ranchers sold their produce. Lillian moved from stall to stall, selecting carrots, potatoes, and fresh greens. She was examining a basket of apples when a familiar voice spoke behind her. "Those are from the Johnson orchard, best in the county." She turned to find Sheriff Jameson standing there, a friendly smile on his face. Today, in full daylight, she could see his features more clearly: strong jaw with a day's growth of beard, eyes the color of burnished copper, laugh lines etched at their corners. He was handsome in a rugged, unpolished way. "I'll take your recommendation then," she said, selecting several apples and placing them in her basket. "How are you finding Silver Creek so far, Miss Wilson?" "It's very pleasant," she replied, moving to the next stall. "Everyone has been kind." He fell into step beside her. "Small towns can be curious about newcomers, but folks here mind their own business for the most part." Lillian glanced at him. Was there a message in those words? "That's good to hear. I'm not very interesting anyway, just a cook trying to earn my way." "Somehow I doubt that," he said, his voice light but his eyes observant. "Not many women travel alone through these parts." "I go where the work takes me," she said with a shrug, stopping to examine some fresh eggs. "Of course." He picked up a tomato from a nearby display, turning it in his hand before setting it back down. "I should let you get back to your shopping. Just wanted to check that you're settling in all right. Very thoughtful of you, Sheriff." He hesitated, then asked, "Will you be staying in Silver Creek long?" The question seemed casual, but Lillian felt the weight behind it. "I haven't decided," she answered honestly. "It depends on how things work out at the hotel." He nodded, touching the brim of his hat. "Well, hope you find reasons to stay. Town could use more good cooks." As he walked away, Lillian felt a curious mix of relief and disappointment. There was something about Austin Jameson that made her want to trust him, which was precisely why she needed to keep her distance. Trust was a luxury she couldn't afford. She finished her shopping and returned to the hotel, throwing herself into lunch preparation. The work was a welcome distraction from thoughts of the sheriff and the dangers that might be following her. By evening, she was exhausted but satisfied with her first day's work. Mr. Pemberton had nodded approvingly at the chicken and dumplings she'd served for supper, and several guests had complimented the apple pie. The next few days fell into a comfortable pattern. Lillian rose before dawn, prepared meals, planned menus, and kept to herself as much as possible. The routine was soothing, and she began to relax slightly, allowing herself to believe that perhaps she had finally outrun her past. On her fourth day in Silver Creek, Lillian ventured to the general store with a list of supplies. The store was busy with afternoon shoppers, and she waited patiently at the counter while the proprietor, a thin man named Mr. Winters, attended to other customers. As she waited, the bell above the door jangled and two men entered. They were dusty from the trail, with hard eyes that scanned the store's occupants. Something about their calculating gaze sent a chill down Lillian's spine. She turned away quickly, pretending to examine a display of canned goods. "Afternoon, gentlemen," Mr. Winters called. "What can I help you with today?" "Information," the taller of the two replied. His voice was flat, emotionless. "We're looking for someone who might have passed through, a woman traveling alone." Lillian's heart began to pound so loudly she was certain everyone could hear it. She kept her back to the men, fighting the urge to flee. "Lots of folks pass through Silver Creek," Mr. Winters replied. "Any particular woman you're looking for?" "Name's Lillian Allen." "Pretty blonde, about 25. Might be using another name." The store had gone quiet, customers pretending not to listen while hanging on every word. Lillian reached for a can of peaches, her hand trembling slightly. "Can't say I recall anyone by that name," Mr. Winters said. "What's your interest in this lady, if you don't mind my asking?" "Family matter," the man replied smoothly. "Her father's taken ill, sent us to bring her home." The lie was so blatant that Lillian nearly laughed despite her terror. Her father had been dead for over a year. "Well, I'll keep an eye out," Mr. Winters promised. "You gentlemen staying in town for a few days. We'll be at the Silver Dollar if anyone remembers seeing her." The bell jangled again as they left. Conversations gradually resumed, but Lillian stood frozen, the can clutched in her white-knuckled grip. They had found her trail. It was only a matter of time before someone made the connection between the woman they sought and the hotel's new cook. She forced herself to approach the counter, placing her list before Mr. Winters with a hand she willed not to shake. "Just these items, please." Mr. Winters studied her with newfound interest. "You all right, Miss Wilson? You've gone pale." "Just a headache," she murmured. "The heat, I suppose?" He nodded, though his expression remained concerned as he began gathering her items. "Those men give you a fright. Don't worry about them. Sheriff Jameson keeps a close eye on strangers passing through. But what if the sheriff decided to help them?" Lawmen often cooperated with one another, and for all she knew, there might be telegrams describing her as a fugitive. The thought made her stomach clench. "Thank you," she said, paying for the supplies. "Could you have these delivered to the hotel kitchen? I've just remembered another errand." "Of course, Toby can take them over within the hour." Lillian left the store, fighting the urge to run. Instead, she walked with measured steps toward the hotel, her mind racing. She needed to leave tonight before the men started asking more questions or showing a description around town. But she had so little money saved, and her horse needed rest after the hard journey to Silver Creek. Lost in these desperate calculations, she didn't notice the figure stepping out of the alley until they collided. "Whoa there," Sheriff Jameson said, steadying her with hands on her shoulders. "You're in quite a hurry, Miss Wilson." Lillian looked up into his face, unable to mask her fear quickly enough. His expression changed immediately, concern replacing his casual smile. "What's wrong?" he asked, his voice low. "Are you in trouble?" "No," she said too quickly. "I'm fine. Just late getting back to the kitchen." His hands remained on her shoulders, his eyes searching hers. "You're scared? Tell me why, please," she whispered, glancing around the street. "I need to go." "Those men at the general store," he said, his voice hardening. "They're looking for you, aren't they?" Lillian's silence was answer enough. The sheriff looked up and down the street, then gently guided her toward the alley he'd emerged from. "Come with me," he said. "Not to the jail," he added when she stiffened. "My house is just behind the sheriff's office. We can talk privately there." Every instinct screamed at her to run, but where would she go? The men would be watching the hotel, and she couldn't reach the livery stable without crossing the main street. With reluctance born of desperation, she allowed Austin to lead her through back alleys to a small house set behind the jailhouse. It was a modest dwelling, 2 rooms with simple furnishings that spoke of a man who spent little time at home. Austin gestured for her to sit at a small table while he moved to the window, carefully checking the street before drawing the curtains. "You're not Sarah Wilson," he said finally, turning to face her. Lillian sat rigid in the chair, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "No." "Are you Lillian Allen?" She closed her eyes briefly. "Yes. And those men, they're not family friends concerned about your welfare, are they?" "No." The word came out as barely more than a whisper. Austin pulled out the chair across from her and sat down, his expression serious but not unkind. "I need you to tell me the truth, Miss Allen, all of it. I can't help you otherwise." "Why would you help me?" she asked. "You don't know me. You don't know what I've done." "I know you're afraid. I know you've been running, and I know those men aren't lawmen or they would have come to me first." He leaned forward. "Start at the beginning." Lillian took a deep breath, the weight of her secrets suddenly unbearable. "My father owned a cattle ranch near Fort Worth. When he died last year, I inherited everything." She twisted her fingers together. "A man named Victor Blackburn had been trying to buy our land for years. My father always refused, and after your father died, Blackburn expected you to sell." "Yes. When I refused as well, things got difficult. Cattle started disappearing. One of our barns burned. Then my foreman was beaten so badly he couldn't work for weeks." Her voice shook with the memories. "Blackburn came to the house one night with an offer: marry him or lose everything." Austin's expression darkened. "I'm guessing you declined his proposal." "I did." "The next day the sheriff arrived with a warrant for my arrest. Blackburn had accused me of stealing his cattle, supposedly mixed in with our herds." She laughed bitterly. "The sheriff was Blackburn's cousin. I knew I'd never get a fair hearing." "So you ran?" Lillian nodded. "I took what money I could gather, my mother's jewelry and my horse. I've been traveling for almost a month, never staying more than a few days anywhere. Those men work for Blackburn. He doesn't give up what he wants." Austin was silent for a long moment, processing her story. "Do you have any proof of what Blackburn did? Witnesses?" "My foreman would testify, but he's still in Texas. And the neighboring ranchers saw what was happening, but they're afraid of Blackburn. He has money and influence. And now he wants you back, dead or alive, I'd wager." Lillian shuddered. "I need to leave Silver Creek, tonight." "Running isn't the answer," Austin said firmly. "You can't keep looking over your shoulder forever." "What choice do I have? If they find me, they won't," he interrupted. "Not if you're under my protection." Lillian stared at him, confusion and hope warring within her. "Why would you risk yourself for me? You only know my side of the story." Austin's mouth curved into a grim smile. "I'm a fair judge of character, Miss Allen. And I've seen men like Blackburn before, bullies who use their power to take what isn't theirs." He stood up, pacing the small room. "Besides, those men lied the moment they walked into town, said they were family friends when they're hired guns. That tells me all I need to know." "What are you suggesting?" "You stay right here in Silver Creek, continuing on as Sarah Wilson. I'll deal with Blackburn's men." "How? There are 2 of them and they're dangerous. So am I when necessary." There was steel in his voice. "And I have something they don't, the law on my side." Lillian shook her head. "They'll just send more men. Blackburn won't stop. Then we'll need to send a message that's clear enough to make him reconsider." Austin returned to the table, his expression thoughtful. "Do you have family elsewhere?" "Someone who could help establish your legitimate claim to the ranch. My mother's brother lives in St. Louis. He's a lawyer, but I haven't spoken to him in years." "That's a start. We could telegraph him, explain the situation." The sudden shift from flight to fight left Lillian dizzy with uncertainty. "You really think we can resolve this? That I could stop running? I do. Austin reached across the table, his hand covering hers. But you need to trust me, Miss Allen, completely. His hand was warm and calloused, the hand of a man who worked hard despite his position as sheriff. Lillian looked into his eyes, searching for deceit or ulterior motives, but found only determination and something else, compassion, perhaps. All right, she said finally. What's your plan? Austin squeezed her hand before releasing it. First, you go back to the hotel as if nothing's wrong. Continue your work, stay visible. I'll speak with these men, let them know I've been asked to watch for Lillian Allen myself by the Texas Rangers. You'll lie to them. Not exactly. I'll tell them I received a telegram about a woman wanted for questioning. I'll imply she's already passed through town, heading north toward Denver. A small smile played at his lips. And while they're chasing false leads, I'll telegraph the Rangers about Blackburn's activities. Cattle rustling and intimidation are serious charges. It seemed too simple, too optimistic, and if they don't believe you, if they recognize me, then we move to Plan B. Austin stood up. But let's try this first. Can you continue on as Sarah Wilson for a while longer? Lillian nodded slowly. Yes, I've become quite good at being someone else. Just for a little while more, he promised. Then maybe you can be Lillian Allen again. There was something in the way he said her real name that made her heart catch. No one had spoken it with such gentle respect in a long time. I should get back, she said, rising from her chair. People will wonder where I've gone. Use the back door. Stay in the alley until you reach the hotel's service entrance. Austin moved to a small desk in the corner, unlocking a drawer. He removed a small revolver and held it out to her. Take this, just in case. Lillian hesitated, then accepted the weapon, tucking it into her pocket. Thank you, Sheriff Jameson. Austin, he corrected. If we're conspiring together, you might as well use my given name. A smile tugged at her lips despite the gravity of the situation. Austin then. At the door, he stopped her with a light touch on her arm. Be careful, Lillian. I'll come by the hotel this evening to let you know how things stand. The sound of her real name on his lips again sent a curious warmth through her. I will. She slipped out the back door and made her way through the alleyways to the hotel's kitchen entrance. No one seemed to notice her return, and she threw herself into dinner preparations with forced concentration, trying to ignore the weight of the revolver in her pocket and the heavier weight of fear in her chest. The dinner service passed in a blur of activity. Lillian moved mechanically through her tasks, jumping at every sound of the front door opening. But Austin didn't appear, and as the evening wore on, her anxiety grew. Had Blackburn's men seen through his ruse? Was he in danger because of her? It was nearly 9 o'clock when Martha appeared in the kitchen doorway. Miss Wilson, Sheriff Jameson is asking for you in the lobby. Lillian wiped her hands on her apron, her heart pounding. Thank you, Martha. I'll be right there. Austin stood by the front desk, his expression carefully neutral as she approached. Evening, Miss Wilson. Sorry to disturb you so late, but I wanted to ask about that apple pie recipe. My mother's birthday is coming up and she's partial to apple desserts. The code was clear they needed to speak privately, and he'd created a plausible reason. Of course, Sheriff. I'd be happy to write it down for you. Mr. Pemberton, who was sorting mail behind the desk, looked up with mild interest. Sheriff's got a sweet tooth, Miss Wilson. Your pie's been the talk of the town. My mother will appreciate the recipe, Austin said. Perhaps we could step outside for a moment. I have a few questions about the ingredients. Outside, the night air was cool, stars scattered across the velvet sky. Austin guided Lillian to a bench on the hotel's small porch, positioning himself to block the view from the street. I spoke with our visitors, he said quietly. They're staying at the Silver Dollar, as they said. I told them I'd received a telegram about Lillian Allen 2 days ago that she'd passed through headed for Denver, traveling with a cattle buyer. Did they believe you? They seemed to. I offered to show them the telegram, but they declined. His mouth quirked into a smile. Probably because they know a fake when they see one, being liars themselves. So what happens now? They're leaving in the morning, following the trail north. Austin's expression grew serious. But that's just buying us time. I sent telegrams to the Texas Rangers and to your uncle in St. Louis. With any luck, we'll hear back soon. Relief flooded through Lillian, followed quickly by doubt. Thank you, but I'm still putting you and this town at risk by staying. Silver Creek has seen its share of trouble. We can handle 2 hired guns. His voice softened. Besides, there's something about you, Lillian Allen, something worth protecting. The words hung between them in the night air, charged with meaning she wasn't ready to examine. I should get back inside, she said finally. Early morning tomorrow. Austin nodded, standing as she did. I'll keep watch tonight just to be sure, and I'll let you know as soon as I hear anything. On impulse, Lillian reached out and squeezed his hand. Thank you, Austin, for believing me. He held her hand a moment longer than necessary. Get some rest. Things will look clearer in the morning. But sleep proved elusive that night. Lillian lay awake, the revolver under her pillow, listening to every creak and settling sound of the old hotel. She thought of Austin standing guard somewhere in the darkness and felt both comforted and troubled by his willingness to put himself at risk for her. When dawn finally came, she rose exhausted but determined to maintain her facade of normalcy. The kitchen was her sanctuary, and she lost herself in the familiar rhythm of breakfast preparation, kneading dough with perhaps more force than necessary. Betsy arrived with the morning gossip. Those 2 strangers left town at first light, she reported while setting tables. Sheriff saw them off personally? Oh, Lillian kept her tone casual. I didn't realize we had visitors, mean-looking fellows. They were asking after some woman yesterday, a runaway or some such. Sheriff told them she'd already passed through. Betsy lowered her voice. Between you and me, I think the sheriff was just trying to get rid of them, didn't like the look of them one bit. The sheriff seems very attentive to the town's welfare, Lillian observed, sliding biscuits into the oven. Austin Jameson's a good man, Betsy agreed. Lost his wife about 3 years back. Influenza took her and their baby. He's been all about the job since then. The information startled Lillian. Somehow she hadn't pictured Austin as a widower, though now she recalled the sadness that sometimes shadowed his eyes. That's terrible. It was. Town thought he might move on after, but he stayed, said Silver Creek needed him. Betsy straightened the last place setting. Some of the widows have set their caps for him, but he doesn't seem interested. Married to the job, my ma says. The conversation shifted to other town matters as breakfast service began. Lillian moved through the morning routine with one ear attuned to the front door, hoping for word from Austin. It wasn't until nearly noon that he appeared in the kitchen doorway, his expression unreadable. Miss Wilson, might I have a word? She wiped her hands on her apron, following him to the small garden behind the hotel. The space was empty, fragrant with late summer flowers. I received a reply from your uncle, Austin said without preamble. He's catching the next train west, should arrive in Denver in about a week. Lillian's breath caught. He's coming here, after all this time? He seemed very concerned about your situation. Austin pulled a folded paper from his pocket. Here's his telegram. He asks that you stay put until he arrives. She took the telegram with trembling fingers, reading her uncle's words. He had been trying to locate her since learning of her father's death, worried about her welfare. The knowledge that she wasn't as alone as she'd believed brought unexpected tears to her eyes. I also heard from the Rangers, Austin continued. They're aware of Blackburn and have been building a case against him for some time. Your testimony could be valuable. Hope, an emotion Lillian had carefully suppressed for weeks, began to unfurl in her chest. Do you think it's possible that I could clear my name and go home? I do. Austin's voice was steady, confident, but it will take time and patience. Can you continue as Sarah Wilson a while longer? Lillian looked down at her flour-dusted apron and work-roughened hands. I'm becoming quite fond of her, actually. She's simpler than Lillian Allen, no ranch to run, no decisions beyond what to serve for supper. But she's not real, Austin said softly, and Lillian Allen is worth knowing. Their eyes met, and something passed between them, understanding, perhaps, or recognition of a shared courage. Austin cleared his throat, breaking the moment. "I should let you get back to work. I'll check in regularly until your uncle arrives." Lillian nodded, reluctant to end their conversation but aware of the kitchen waiting. "Thank you, Austin, for everything." He touched the brim of his hat in response, a gesture that was becoming endearingly familiar. The next few days passed with agonizing slowness. Lillian threw herself into her work, expanding the hotel's menu and earning praise from Mr. Pemberton for increasing dinner patronage. Austin stopped by each day, sometimes just nodding from across the dining room, sometimes finding a moment to speak with her privately. Each brief encounter left her more confused about her feelings for the quiet sheriff. On the fourth day after Blackburn's men had left, Austin appeared at the kitchen door just as Lillian was finishing the lunch cleanup. His expression was grim. "We need to talk," he said. Lillian's heart sank. "What's happened?" "Not here. Can you get away for an hour?" She glanced around the kitchen. Preparations for dinner were well in hand and Betsy could manage if needed. "Let me speak with Mr. Pemberton." 10 minutes later, they were walking toward the outskirts of town, far enough from curious ears for private conversation. Austin waited until they reached a small stream that marked the town boundary before speaking. "I received word that Blackburn himself has left Texas. He's heading this way." Cold fear washed through Lillian. "He knows I'm here." "I don't think so. Not yet. His men would have headed back to Texas before sending word about the Denver lead." Austin's face was tight with concern. "But Blackburn's not a fool. He might check other towns along the route." "When will he arrive?" 3 days, perhaps 4. We need to be ready." Lillian hugged herself against a sudden chill despite the warm afternoon. "I should leave, draw him away from Silver Creek." "No," Austin said firmly. "Running plays into his hands. He's counting on isolating you, wearing you down until you have nowhere to turn." He took her by the shoulders, his grip gentle but insistent. "Your uncle will be in Denver tomorrow. I've arranged for him to hire additional protection, former Rangers I know and trust. They'll escort him here." "And then what?" "We wait for Blackburn to find me, we prepare. We gather evidence and witnesses." Austin's eyes were fierce with determination. "This ends here, Lillian. One way or another, Victor Blackburn will not leave Silver Creek still believing he can hunt you with impunity." The strength in his voice steadied her, even as she registered the personal nature of his commitment. This was more than a sheriff doing his duty. "Why are you doing this?" she asked softly. "Risking so much for a woman you barely know." Austin's hands slid from her shoulders, one reaching up to touch her cheek with unexpected gentleness. "I think you know why." The air between them seemed to still, the sounds of the stream and distant town fading away. Lillian found herself leaning into his touch, drawn by something more powerful than fear or gratitude. "Austin," she whispered, not sure what she wanted to say. He stepped back abruptly, dropping his hand. "I'm sorry, that was inappropriate." "No," she said quickly. "It wasn't." The look he gave her was complicated desire mixed with doubt and a protectiveness that made her heart ache. "We should get back to town. There's much to prepare." The walk back was silent, each lost in thoughts too weighty for casual conversation. At the hotel, Austin paused before leaving. "Lock your door tonight. I'll have a deputy watching the hotel, but take no chances." Lillian nodded. "When will my uncle arrive?" "Day after tomorrow, if all goes well." Austin hesitated, then added, "Whatever happens, Lillian, know that you're not alone anymore." The word stayed with her as she returned to the kitchen, mechanically preparing dinner while her mind worked through possibilities and dangers. For the first time since her father's death, she wasn't facing her troubles in isolation. The realization was both comforting and terrifying if anything happened to Austin because of her. The next day passed in tense anticipation. Austin was nowhere to be seen, apparently making preparations for whatever confrontation might come. Lillian maintained her routine, but her nerves were stretched taut, jumping at every sudden noise. That evening, as she was closing up the kitchen, Martha appeared with a note. "Sheriff asked me to give you this, Miss Wilson." The paper contained just a few lines. "Blackburn will arrive sooner than expected. Stay inside the hotel. Deputies are watching. I'll come for you when your uncle arrives." Lillian folded the note carefully, her hands trembling slightly. The moment of reckoning was approaching faster than anticipated. She thanked Martha and retreated to her room, double-checking that the revolver Austin had given her was loaded and within reach. Sleep was impossible. Lillian sat by the window much of the night, watching the quiet street below. Occasionally, she glimpsed a figure moving in the shadows, one of Austin's deputies. She hoped, rather than Blackburn's men. Dawn was breaking when a soft knock sounded at her door. Lillian grabbed the revolver before approaching cautiously. "Who is it?" "Austin," came the quiet reply. "Open up, quickly." She unlocked the door to find him looking grim and tired, as if he hadn't slept either. "What's happened?" "Blackburn arrived last night. He's at the Silver Dollar with 4 men. Austin stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "Your uncle's stage is due in 2 hours. I need to get you somewhere safer until then." "The hotel isn't safe. Blackburn doesn't know you're here yet, but he's asking questions around town. It's only a matter of time." Austin ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration. "I have a place in mind. My deputy's wife's sister has a small cabin just outside town. No one would think to look for you there." Lillian began gathering her few possessions, moving with the efficiency of someone accustomed to quick departures. "How will we get there without being seen?" "Service entrance, then through the alleys to where I have horses waiting." Austin watched her pack with a troubled expression. "I'm sorry about this, Lillian. I had hoped to resolve things more officially." "This isn't your fault," she said, stuffing the last of her clothing into her bag. "You've done more than anyone could expect." "Not enough," he muttered. She paused, looking at him directly. "You've given me something I'd lost, Austin. Hope. Whatever happens next, I'm grateful for that." His expression softened, the worry lines easing slightly. "We'll get through this. I promise." They slipped out of the hotel as the first light of day touched the rooftops of Silver Creek. The town was still mostly asleep, only a few early risers visible as they hurried through back alleys to where 2 horses waited, tethered in a stand of trees behind the church. Austin helped Lillian mount, then swung into his own saddle. "It's about 3 miles. Stay close and follow my lead." They rode in silence, skirting the main roads and keeping to less traveled paths through the surrounding countryside. The cabin appeared after about 30 minutes, a small, sturdy structure nestled among pine trees, smoke curling from its chimney. A woman stepped onto the porch as they approached, rifle in hand, until she recognized Austin. "Morning, Sheriff. All's quiet here." "Thanks, Clara." "This is the lady I mentioned." Clara nodded to Lillian. "Come on in. Got coffee brewing and biscuits in the oven." The cabin's interior was simple but comfortable, with handmade furniture and colorful quilts softening the rough-hewn walls. Clara, a no-nonsense woman in her 40s, ushered Lillian to a chair at the small table. "Deputy Miller's watching the road," she told Austin. "No one's come this way all night. Good. I need to get back to town before Blackburn notices I'm gone. The stage should arrive by 8. Austin turned to Lillian. "Stay inside. Clara's husband will be back soon. He's got a shotgun and knows how to use it." "I'll be fine," Lillian assured him, though her voice betrayed her nervousness. Austin hesitated, then crossed to her chair and took her hand. "This will end today one way or another. When your uncle arrives with the ranger's evidence, we'll confront Blackburn legally. If he resists—" "He left the sentence unfinished. Be careful," she whispered. "He's dangerous. So am I when what I care about is threatened." The words carried a weight of meaning that hung in the air between them. After Austin left, Lillian found herself pacing the small cabin despite Clara's attempts to engage her in conversation. The hours crawled by with excruciating slowness. Clara's husband, a taciturn man named Frank, arrived mid-morning and took up position on the porch with his shotgun, while Clara busied herself with household tasks, occasionally peering out the windows with sharp-eyed vigilance. It was nearly noon when they heard horses approaching. Frank stood, shotgun raised, while Clara motioned for Lillian to move away from the windows. "It's the sheriff," Frank called after a moment. "Got 3 men with him." Lillian rushed to the door as Austin dismounted, followed by an older gentleman in a city suit and 2 hard-looking men who surveyed the surroundings with professional assessment. "Lillian," the suited man said, his voice breaking slightly as he approached the porch. "My God, you look just like your mother." Recognition dawned slowly. "Uncle James," he nodded, removing his hat. "I'm sorry it's been so long. Your father and I, well, we had our differences, but I never stopped thinking about you." Emotions welled up: grief for her father, relief at this connection to her past, hope for her future. Lillian stepped forward and was enveloped in her uncle's embrace, the scent of tobacco and cologne bringing back distant memories of childhood visits. Austin gave them a moment before speaking. "We should go inside. There's much to discuss." Around Clara's kitchen table, James Allen laid out the documents he'd brought: affidavits from neighboring ranchers detailing Blackburn's intimidation tactics, financial records showing his mounting debts and desperate need for Lillian's land, and most damning, a sworn statement from the county clerk admitting he'd been paid to falsify records regarding cattle brands. "The Rangers have been building this case for months," James explained. "When Sheriff Jameson's telegram arrived, it was the missing piece they needed: confirmation that Blackburn was pursuing you across state lines, which makes this a federal matter." "So what happens now?" Lillian asked. Austin leaned forward, his face grave. "We confront Blackburn with the evidence and give him a choice: face federal charges or leave you and your property alone. Forever." "He won't accept that," Lillian said. "He's too proud, too used to getting his way. Then he'll face the consequences." One of the Rangers spoke for the first time, his voice hard with certainty. "Men like Blackburn count on their victims being isolated and afraid. That ends today." They formulated a plan. Austin would request Blackburn meet him at the sheriff's office under the pretense of sharing information about Lillian's whereabouts. The Rangers would be present, but not immediately visible. James would remain with Lillian at the cabin until summoned. As the men prepared to leave, Lillian pulled Austin aside. "If anything happens to you because of me, nothing will happen," he interrupted, his voice low and intense. "Except that after today, you'll be free to reclaim your life." She studied his face, the determined set of his jaw, the warmth in his eyes that belied his professional demeanor. "And what if I'm not sure what life I want to reclaim?" The question hung between them, loaded with possibilities neither was ready to articulate. Austin's hand moved as if to touch her face, then dropped back to his side. "One step at a time," he said finally. "First, we deal with Blackburn." After they left, the waiting became unbearable. James tried to distract her with stories of her mother's family and offers of legal assistance in reclaiming her ranch. But Lillian's thoughts remained with Austin, facing a man who had proven his willingness to destroy anyone who stood in his way. The afternoon shadows were lengthening when they heard a horse approaching at speed. Frank stepped outside, shotgun ready, then called back. "It's Deputy Miller." The young deputy dismounted in a cloud of dust. "Sheriff Jameson sent me. He says it's time for Miss Allen and Mr. Allen to come to town." "What's happened?" Lillian demanded, heart racing. "Blackburn's at the jail. Sheriff's got him talking, but things are tense. The Rangers are in position." Miller's expression was grim. "Sheriff says to hurry." The ride to town seemed endless, though in reality it took less than 20 minutes. Silver Creek appeared peaceful in the golden light of late afternoon, giving no indication of the drama unfolding at the sheriff's office. Miller led them to the back entrance of the jail. Inside, they found one of the Rangers waiting. "Sheriff's got Blackburn in his office," he explained quietly. "The man's not taking the news well. His men are at the saloon being watched." "What does Austin need from us?" James asked. "He wants Miss Allen to confront Blackburn directly with the evidence in hand. Show him there's no escape." The Ranger looked at Lillian. Are you up for that? Fear coiled in her stomach, but determination pushed it aside. Yes, I'm tired of running. They moved through the jail to a connecting door that led to Austin's office. Through the small window, Lillian could see Austin seated behind his desk, facing Victor Blackburn, a barrel-chested man with iron-gray hair and cold eyes. The second ranger stood unobtrusively in the corner, hand near his weapon. Austin looked up, catching her eye through the window, and gave an almost imperceptible nod. Lillian took a deep breath, straightened her spine, and opened the door. Blackburn turned at the sound, his expression shifting from irritation to shock as he recognized her. "Lillian Allen," he said, recovering quickly. "What a fortunate coincidence. I've been looking for you." "I know exactly what you've been doing," Lillian replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "The question is, do you know what I've been doing?" Confusion flickered across his face. "Running from justice, I believe." James stepped forward, placing the stack of documents on Austin's desk. "My niece has been gathering evidence, Mr. Blackburn, evidence of your criminal activities." Blackburn's face darkened. "Who the hell are you?" James Allen, attorney at law, Miss Allen's legal representative. James tapped the papers. "We have sworn statements from 7 of your neighbors detailing your intimidation tactics. We have financial records showing your desperate need for the Allen Ranch to cover your gambling debts. And we have a signed confession from the county clerk admitting he falsified records at your behest." "Lies," Blackburn spat, but his complexion had paled. "Federal charges," the ranger in the corner said mildly. "Crossing state lines in pursuit of fraudulent claims. That's serious prison time, Blackburn." Austin stood, his presence commanding the room. "You have a choice to make. Sign a legal document relinquishing all claims to Miss Allen's property and agree never to contact or pursue her again, or face federal prosecution." Blackburn's eyes darted around the room, calculating. "This is a bluff. You have nothing substantial. Try us," Austin said softly. "The federal marshal is already on his way from Denver, due tomorrow." A tense silence followed as Blackburn visibly weighed his options. Finally, he gave a curt nod. "Fine, I'll sign your paper. The Allen Ranch isn't worth prison." James produced a document he'd prepared at the cabin, laying it before Blackburn. "This states that you acknowledge Miss Allen's legal ownership of her property, withdraw all claims against her, and agree to cease all harassment and pursuit. Violation of these terms will result in immediate prosecution." Blackburn scanned the document, his jaw tight. "And if I sign this, I'm free to go." "You'll leave Silver Creek immediately," Austin said, "and never return, your men as well." With a look of pure hatred, Blackburn grabbed the pen James offered and scrawled his signature. "Satisfied?" "Almost," Austin said. He turned to Lillian. "Miss Allen, is there anything you'd like to say to Mr. Blackburn before he leaves town forever?" Lillian looked at the man who had caused her so much fear and suffering, who had forced her to abandon her home and identity. She expected to feel anger, perhaps even hatred to match his, but instead found only relief and a strange pity. "I hope you find peace, Mr. Blackburn," she said quietly. "I know I have." Blackburn's expression twisted with contempt. "Sentimental nonsense, you women are all the same weak." He turned to Austin. "Are we finished?" "We are. The Rangers will escort you and your men to the town limits. If you ever show your face in Silver Creek again, or if we hear you've violated this agreement in any way, the consequences will be severe." Austin's voice was cold with authority. "Do I make myself clear?" Blackburn stood, straightening his jacket with exaggerated dignity. "Perfectly clear, Sheriff. Enjoy your victory while it lasts." After Blackburn left with the Rangers, the office fell silent. James squeezed Lillian's shoulder. "I'll give you two a moment," he said, stepping outside. Alone with Austin, Lillian felt the full impact of what had just occurred. Her legs suddenly weak, she sank into a chair. "Is it really over?" Austin knelt before her, taking her hands in his. "It's over. You're free, Lillian, free to go home, free to stay, free to be whoever you want to be." The reality of those choices overwhelmed her. For weeks she had thought only of survival, of escape. Now the future stretched before her, full of possibilities. "I don't know what I want," she admitted. "You don't have to decide everything now." Austin's thumbs traced gentle circles on the backs of her hands. "Your uncle says he can help you sell the ranch if you don't want to return, or hire trustworthy managers if you do." "And what about you?" Lillian asked softly. "What do you want?" Austin's eyes held hers, unguarded for the first time since they'd met. "I want you to stay, here in Silver Creek." His voice dropped lower. "With me." The confession hung between them, fragile and momentous. "We barely know each other," she whispered. "I know enough," he said simply. "I know you're brave and resilient. I know you're kind, even to those who don't deserve it. And I know that when you arrived in town and hid your real name, something inside me recognized you anyway." His smile was tender. "Maybe that's why I said what I did that first day." Confusion furrowed her brow. "What did you say?" "When I realized you weren't giving your real name." "I told myself, then I'll call you mine." A flush colored his cheeks. "Just in my thoughts, of course." The words sent a wave of warmth through her. "Austin." The office door opened as James returned, followed by the Rangers. "Blackburn and his men are on their way out of town," one reported. "Under close watch." The moment broken, Austin stood, resuming his professional demeanor. "Thank you, gentlemen. I can't express how grateful we are for your assistance." As the men discussed final details, Lillian found herself watching Austin, the quiet authority with which he spoke, the respect he commanded, the occasional glance he sent her way when he thought no one was looking. Something was building between them, something that had begun the moment she rode into Silver Creek. Later that evening, after a celebratory dinner at the hotel with James and the Rangers, Austin walked Lillian back to her room. The hotel corridor was quiet, most guests already retired for the night. "Your uncle seems like a good man," Austin observed. "Will you go to St. Louis with him when he leaves?" "He's invited me to visit," Lillian acknowledged. "To meet my cousins and see where my mother grew up." She paused at her door, turning to face him. "But I don't think I want to leave just yet." Hope flickered in Austin's eyes. "No, no," she took a deep breath. "Mr. Pemberton has asked me to stay on as head cook. He says business has improved since I arrived." "Is that the only reason you'd stay?" Austin asked, moving a step closer. Lillian looked up at him, courage rising within her, not the desperate courage of flight, but the steadier courage of new beginnings. "You know it isn't." His hand rose to cup her cheek, and this time he didn't pull away. "Lillian Allen," he murmured. "Would you allow me to court you properly? No more running, no more hiding, just us discovering who we might be together." In answer, she leaned forward and pressed her lips to his, a soft, questioning kiss that quickly deepened as his arms encircled her. When they finally parted, both breathing quickly, Lillian felt a sense of homecoming stronger than any she'd experienced. "I'll take that as a yes," Austin said, his voice rough with emotion. "It's a yes," she confirmed, smiling up at him. "But I think I might keep cooking at the hotel, at least for now. I've grown rather fond of it. As long as you save some of those apple pies for me." His expression grew more serious. "We'll take things slowly, Lillian. Give you time to decide what you want for your future." "Some decisions are easier than others," she replied, touching his face gently. "Good night, Austin. Good night, Lillian." He caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm before releasing it. "Sleep well. Tomorrow is the first day of your new life." As she closed the door behind her, Lillian leaned against it, her heart full. For the first time in months, she would sleep without fear, without the weight of a false name, without the need to plan her next escape. Silver Creek had offered her refuge when she needed it most, but now it promised something more: a place to belong, a future to build, and a man who had seen her true self even when she was hiding. Tomorrow she would write to the foreman of her father's ranch, telling him she was safe. She would discuss options with her uncle. She would reclaim her identity as Lillian Allen. But tonight, she simply savored the freedom of being exactly who she was, where she was meant to be. Over the next weeks, Silver Creek watched with interest and approval as their sheriff courted the hotel's cook. The town had quickly embraced Lillian once her true identity and ordeal became known, offering friendship and support that touched her deeply. She continued her work at the hotel, finding satisfaction in the simple rhythms of creating meals that brought people together. Austin courted her with a gentle persistence that respected her need for independence while making his feelings clear. They rode together on his days off, exploring the beautiful country surrounding Silver Creek. He brought her wildflowers and books from his personal collection, joining her on the hotel porch in the evenings to discuss what she'd read. They shared stories of their pasts, Austin speaking of his late wife with a gentle remembrance that honored her memory while making room for new love. Lillian describing the ranch she'd grown up on and her complicated relationship with her stern father. In late autumn, as the aspen trees turned gold against the evergreen backdrop, Austin took Lillian to his favorite spot in the nearby mountains, a small meadow overlooking the valley where Silver Creek nestled like a jewel among the pines. The air was crisp, the sky an impossible blue. "I've been thinking," he said as they sat on a fallen log sharing coffee from a thermos. "About the future." Lillian's heart quickened. "Have you? Your uncle's offer to help you sell the ranch, have you decided?" She nodded. "I'm going to sell. The ranch was my father's dream, not mine. The money will give me freedom to choose my own path." "And what path are you considering?" His voice was casual, but his eyes watched her intently. Lillian took a deep breath. "I'd like to stay in Silver Creek, permanently." She turned to face him fully. "I've fallen in love with this town. And with its sheriff." The joy that spread across Austin's face was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. "I was hoping you'd say that." He reached into his pocket, withdrawing a small leather pouch. "I have something to ask you, Lillian Allen." From the pouch, he removed a ring, a simple gold band set with a single pearl surrounded by tiny diamonds. "This was my grandmother's," he explained. "My mother gave it to me after I lost Sarah. She said to save it until I found love again if I ever did." His eyes met hers, vulnerable and hopeful. "I never thought I would, until you rode into town." Lillian's breath caught as he took her hand. "Lillian Allen, I love you, your courage, your kindness, your strength. Would you do me the great honor of becoming my wife?" Tears blurred her vision as she nodded. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Austin Jameson, I will marry you." He slipped the ring onto her finger, then drew her close for a kiss that held all the promise of their future together. When they finally parted, Lillian laughed softly. "What is it?" Austin asked, smiling at her joy. "I was just thinking all those weeks I spent being Sarah Wilson, hiding who I really was, and now I'll be changing my name again, but this time by choice." She touched his face tenderly. "You said you'd call me yours, now you can." "Mrs. Lillian Jameson," he murmured, testing the name. "It sounds right. It feels right," she agreed. "I'm not running anymore, I'm home." They were married in the Silver Creek church as winter's first snow dusted the town in white. Lillian wore a gown of deep blue velvet that her uncle had sent from St. Louis, with her mother's locket around her neck. Austin stood tall and proud in a new black suit, his badge polished for the occasion. The entire town turned out to witness their union, filling the small church to overflowing. After the ceremony, the celebration moved to the hotel, where Lillian had supervised the preparation of a feast despite Mr. Pemberton's protests that a bride shouldn't cook for her own wedding. Betsy had followed Lillian's instructions to the letter, producing an impressive spread that included Austin's favorite apple pie. As evening fell, the newlyweds slipped away to the house that would now be their shared home. Austin had spent weeks preparing it, adding feminine touches with Martha's guidance, new curtains, a larger bed, a rocking chair by the fireplace. A wedding gift from James Allen had arrived the day before, a beautiful piano for the parlor, acknowledging Lillian's once-mentioned love of music. "Welcome home, Mrs. Jameson," Austin said, lifting her over the threshold with a smile that matched her own. Later, as they lay together in the quiet darkness, Lillian nestled against her husband's chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "I never imagined," when I rode into Silver Creek that morning, that I was riding toward my future instead of away from my past. Austin's arms tightened around her. Sometimes the things we're running from lead us exactly where we're meant to be. He pressed a kiss to her forehead. I thank God every day that your path led you here to me. As do I, she whispered, tilting her face up for his kiss. As do I. Spring came to Silver Creek with a riot of wildflowers and new beginnings. Lillian had settled fully into her role as the sheriff's wife, dividing her time between their home and the hotel kitchen, where she now supervised rather than cooked daily. With the proceeds from her ranch sale safely invested on her uncle's advice, she had opened a small bakery adjacent to the hotel Lillian's kitchen, which quickly became a town gathering place. On a bright May morning, as Austin prepared to leave for his daily rounds, Lillian stopped him at the door with a mysterious smile. I have something for you, she said, placing a small package in his hands. Austin unwrapped it curiously to find a tiny pair of knitted booties. He stared at them uncomprehendingly for a moment before understanding dawned in his eyes. Lillian, are you? Yes, she confirmed, her eyes shining. Dr. Matthews confirmed it yesterday. We're having a baby, Austin, in November. Joy and wonder transformed his face as he gathered her in his arms, lifting her off her feet in his excitement. A baby, he repeated, his voice thick with emotion. Our baby. As he set her down gently, almost reverently, Lillian saw the shadow of old grief pass briefly through his eyes. She touched his face, understanding. This child doesn't replace what you lost, she said softly, but it's a new blessing, a new chapter. The best chapter, he agreed, his hands gently cradling her still flat stomach. I love you, Lillian Jameson, more than I ever thought possible. That evening, sitting on their porch watching the sunset paint the western sky, Austin placed his hand over hers, his thumb brushing against her wedding ring. Remember when you first came to town, when you gave me that false name? Lillian nodded, smiling at the memory. Sarah Wilson. My first alias. I knew it wasn't real, he admitted. Something in your eyes, a guardedness that didn't match the name. Is that when you decided to call me yours instead? She teased, recalling his confession from the day of their engagement. It was. His smile was tender as he placed his hand on her stomach where their child grew. And now you are, you and our little one. Lillian leaned against his shoulder, contentment washing through her. From a woman on the run, hiding her identity and her heart, she had become a woman fully known and deeply loved. Silver Creek had offered her sanctuary when she most needed it, but Austin Jameson had given her something even more precious, the courage to stop running and start living. As darkness settled over the town they both now called home, Lillian thought of the long journey that had brought her here, not just the physical miles but the emotional distance from fear to love, from hiding to belonging. She had hidden her real name, and in doing so had found her true self. What are you thinking about? Austin asked, his arm warm around her shoulders. About names, she replied. About how sometimes we have to lose one to find another that fits us better. She turned to look at him, her heart full. I've been Sarah and Lillian Allen and now Lillian Jameson. But being yours, that's the name that feels most real. And you'll always be mine, he promised, sealing the words with a kiss that tasted of home and hope and the future stretching bright before them. Always and forever mine.